The views, opinions, and content of this show are those of the host, guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect those of Local Matters Broadcasting, LLC, its owners, partners, affiliates, assigns, or heirs. Having said that, it's now time to say good morning, St. Johns County. Welcome to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging, better known in our community as the COA. We are your local nonprofit agency who for the past 50 years has been leading and advocating for the dignity, independence, health, and community involvement of older St. Johns County residents. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, broadcasting to you live from the studio of WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Joining me today is Dr. Sharon Glover, Assistant Professor of Occupational Therapy Programs at the University of St Augustine for Health Sciences. Dr. Glover has been an occupational therapist for over 30 years. She receives her Bachelor of Science in Occupational Therapy from Cleveland State University and a post-professional Doctor of Occupational Therapy from Chatham University in Pittsburgh. She has an executive certification in home modifications from the University of Southern California Leonard Davis School of Gerontology and a Lee Silverman voice treatment certification for Parkinson's disease. Dr. Glover is a member of the American Occupational Therapy Association, Florida Occupational Therapy Association, and has a national board for certification in occupational therapy certification. Dr. Glover is active in the occupational therapy profession both at state and national levels. She is a conference reviewer and a critically appraised topic reviewer for AOTA. While in Pennsylvania, she served as chair of the Commission on Practice Committee for the Pennsylvania Occupational Therapy. And prior to moving to Florida in 2019, she lived in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Louisiana. In addition to her clinical positions, Dr. Glover was an adjunct faculty in the Master of Occupational Therapy program at Duquesne University. And prior to joining the University of St Augustine for Health Sciences, she was an assistant professor in OT department at Louisiana State University, Health in Shreveport, and while there, she was recognized as a healer at the LSU Foundation Evening with Healers for her work with clients in the faculty outpatient clinic. Good morning, Dr. Glover.
Good morning. It makes me sound really special.
Well, you are, and what a great... I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about your background so that they understand that when we talk about our topic today, that you have been well educated and have lots of experience, and you are definitely an expert in our topic that we'll be dealing with today. So a nice little fun fact is that we share some of the same stomping grounds. I was raised and I lived in the northern panhandle of West Virginia in the steel mill town of Weirton, and that's just 30 miles west of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, I'm very familiar with Pittsburgh, which of course you are as well, having been there at Chatham University and then also at Duquesne University. And then my oldest daughter lives in downtown Cleveland, and she is just within walking distance of Cleveland State University.
Wow. Wow. I'm surprised we didn't run into each other somewhere.
Exactly. So you said you grew up in the Akron area. Yeah. So we're both from the same neck of the woods. So it's always great to connect with folks, and especially down here in St. Augustine. I love when I'm driving around and I see a Steelers fan, and I don't know if you became a Steelers fan while living in the Pittsburgh area, or if you're an NFL fan at all.
It's tough because growing up in Ohio, we were Cleveland Browns fans.
Sure.
And then I moved to Pittsburgh. And there's a big rivalry between the Browns and the Steelers.
Absolutely.
So when the Browns and the Steelers play, I'm a Browns fan. When the Steelers are playing anybody else, I'm a Steelers fan.
Okay, good. All right. Well, my oldest daughter, she is dating a young man who is from Cleveland and, of course, is a Cleveland Browns fan. And so I have found myself rooting a little bit more for the Cleveland Browns since that, because I like him. Now, if I didn't like him, I don't know that I would be rooting for the Browns. But all right. So before we get into our questions about occupational therapy, which is our topic for today, especially as it pertains to seniors. As you know, the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences has been part of the St. Augustine community for well over 25 years and is in the process of moving to its new location, the former St. Augustine Record Building. So I'm just wondering if you would be kind enough to just give a little bit of an update of how that's going.
Yes. Well, as you said, we've been here since 1979. And we had Tuesday a topping off party luncheon with our construction company, which is Stevens Construction. They're the ones doing all the construction work up there. And they did a topping off party, which was they allowed the faculty and the staff and everybody who's affiliated with University of St Augustine to sign a beam. And then that beam was placed at the top of the building. We understand that once they do the rest of the construction and put the ceilings and walls in, we won't be able to see that beam necessarily, but we'll know that it's there with our signatures on it.
So 50 years from now, when somebody else is renovating the building, then they will find that beam with your signature.
Yes. So we're on target. I checked in with the media team and with the construction group, and we're on target to finish construction in the fall of 2024. So that would mean we could potentially be starting classes next January in our new building. So that's what we're hoping for. And our new building, for people, I'm not familiar, and I never saw the record building when it was actually the record, but it's a 40,000 square foot building, and we're adding 80,000 square feet to that. So that really gives us a lot of room for our classrooms, but also for our innovative centers for innovative clinical practice. Mm-hmm. And that's really nice for our student learning because we use that for them to get hands-on practice in simulations, like in a hospital environment or home environment. So we're going to have more hospital beds. We're going to have 14 hospital beds, 6 assessment rooms, 2 complex simulation rooms, hospital simulations rooms that are similar to like what you might find in an ICU, in an mm-hmm. intensive care unit. We also will have an activities of daily living room that's set up like a house and a home. And then we also have our cadaver and our atomage tables anatomy lab. And cadavers, people typically know, the atomage table is, it's really very cool. It's a big table, and it starts off, you see the body, and as you go through the table, you can kind of go through the layers of the human body, which is really important for us as occupational therapists to understand how the body functions mm-hmm. so that we can do what we need to do for it, So that anatomy piece is really key in the education. So this is hopefully going to accommodate our new growth and encourage us to increase our enrollment in terms mm-hmm. of the fact that we will have both a residential program, a program that's like Monday through Friday. We have a flex program that is on the weekends, and then we'll have what's called a hybrid immersion program, which allows the students to learn online and then come on campus for a few very intensive days throughout. So hopefully this is going to meet a lot of learning needs mm-hmm. of the students and the people coming towards our profession.
Well, it's very exciting. It's always exciting to be in something brand new, that is for sure. So I'm sure that faculty and students alike are all very excited about it. So we're going to go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, we'll dive into our topic today of occupational therapy. You're listening to the COA Radio Show on 102.1 FM. And welcome back to the weekly radio show of St. Johns County Council on Aging. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA. Joining me today is Dr. Sharon Glover, Assistant Professor of Occupational Therapy Programs at the University of St Augustine for Health Sciences. And prior to the break, we were talking about the new building and how exciting that is. But today's topic is occupational therapy. And so, Dr. Glover, if you would be so kind, tell our listeners, if you would, the difference to begin with, the difference between occupational therapy and physical therapy.
Always ask that question. Occupational therapy, and I never compare. So occupational therapy is a profession where we believe in the value of occupations for people to demonstrate their independence. And I know the next question everybody's going to ask is, well, I'm retired, why do I need a job? We don't look at occupation as a job. We look at occupation as all those things that you need and want to do in your life to be successful in your life. So everything from getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, making breakfast, going out with friends for a cup of coffee, driving your car, volunteering, anything like that really is occupation. We divide our occupations into different categories so that we have sort of a language to talk about with it. But when we're looking at our clients or the people that we're dealing with, we say, what are those things that are important to you? What are those things that you need to do? And that might be something from as simple as being able to make a telephone call to something as complex as being able to drive a car. So we really look at that whole aspect of your life. So we do have some things that we do that are very similar to a physical therapist, but we don't compare ourselves to them. There are areas where our professions overlap. We haven't figured out how to magically fly somebody from their bedroom to the kitchen, so they do have to walk there. Mm-hmm. So we may talk to people about their walking, but that really is the PT's level of expertise. And so we but we encourage them to use that expertise, and we use our expertise with the uniqueness of occupations and how that helps people.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I think back, my father-in-law back in 2010, he had a brain aneurysm rupture mm-hmm. that left him paralyzed on the left side. And so when I think back to the different therapy that he had, for me, not really knowing much about occupational therapy or the differences between, to me, I just thought that was all physical therapy. Mm-hmm. But I do remember different therapists coming initially, once we got him home, coming into the home, and there were therapists that would help him with the walking, but there were also therapists who would say, okay, this is how we need to design mm-hmm. your home in order for you to be able to function better. And so that would have been the occupational therapist. Yeah. Okay.
That's the area that I specialize in. It's the home modifications of looking at the environment and saying, how does this environment support you to do the things you want to do, and where maybe is the environment not being as supportive for it. So, yeah, we can work anywhere. We work the COA is with the older adult population, the seniors, but we work with children, we work with adolescents, we're in school systems, we're in people's homes, we're in nursing homes, we're in hospitals. We go everywhere.
That's great. So speaking of the home modifications, and you have, again, you have the executive certification of home modifications, just trying to find it on my notes there. And so one of the things that I did want to ask you is, what would be your top 5 recommendations to seniors as far as modifications to their homes so that we can prevent falls from happening?
Yes, and that's a huge issue, fall prevention, and that's an area where we do a lot of work with our physical therapy counterparts, but fall prevention and home modifications, super important. I would say one of the first things that you would do is widen the doorway in your bathroom. And that doesn't mean you have to do construction. They have these things called swing-away hinges where the door will now open wider so that you get the entire width of the door opening that you can get through. Because a lot of times people get caught not being able to get in the door. Mm-hmm. Their walker's too wide, their wheelchair's too wide, or they just can't fit through there. So that's one of the first ones. The second one that I usually look at is the whole bathroom itself. That's one of our most vulnerable rooms. We're naked, it's wet, and things are slippery. Mm-hmm. A lot of hard surfaces. So we talk to people about grab bars in their shower areas or around the toilet area, and where the best placement of those grab bars are. And sometimes that's difficult depending on how your bathroom's set up. So we do look at that. We may make recommendations for people to get some kind of a seat or a bench that helps them get in and out of the tub. But there's a lot of things that we can do in the bathroom. And luckily for us now, things are much more aesthetically pleasing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times people think about grab bars and they think that's those big metal bars that you find in the public bathrooms, and nobody wants that in their house. But amazingly, grab bars come in all colors. They come in all kinds of finishes. There's lots of choices in that. So widen the doorway, the bathroom. The third area that I usually look at for people is the bedroom and the lighting from the bedroom to the bathroom, because as we get older, sometimes we need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And if it's dark, it's much easier to fall because you're not seeing things. But at the same point, you don't want to turn on the overhead light and get that bright light. Now you've got an issue with your vision adjusting to that. So we look at lighting options from the bedroom to the bathroom. So I'm up to 3, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to narrow them down. The fourth one I would look at is the entrance to the house. Whichever entrance you use the most, is that well designed in terms of, are the stairs safe if you have stairs there? If you don't have stairs, is your threshold in good shape? Do you need maybe a handrail by that just to give you something there? or even maybe a shelf by the door to put all your packages down so you can actually open the door without trying to hold everything. And then the fifth one that I would say is probably the biggest one is then looking at the kitchen and how things are organized in the kitchen. I always tell my clients when I see them, like, I've moved many times in my life, having lived in 5 states and everything. And my mom and dad usually come and help us move. And my mom always sets up the kitchen. And it's always set up the way her kitchen is at her house. But one time we moved, and she always puts the glasses to the left of the sink. Well, I didn't have a cupboard to the left of the sink. And my mom and I were like, well, where do the glasses go? And it made me think about sometimes we put things in a place and it becomes so familiar that we don't actually think about, is it the best location for what we do? So in that kitchen actually was one of my better functioning kitchens because things were by where I needed them rather than where they've always gone. So I think the kitchen and the kitchen organization is really important. Now, somebody who's listening to this is probably going, she didn't say a thing about rugs. Everybody tells me to get rid of my rugs. I don't tell people to get rid of their rugs automatically. What we look at is how you are walking around in your space and if those rugs are a hazard to you. So I'll tell you a funny story. When I worked in Pittsburgh, it's very hilly for anyone who's not familiar with Pittsburgh, lots of hills. And I went to see a lady because she was being seen by the nursing and the physical therapist in home care following a fall and some things had happened. But they didn't think she needed OT, but then they did. They said, we need OT. So I come to see her, and the PT and the nurse were saying, we're really having issues. She's got all these rugs all over her house. She doesn't understand why she needs to get rid of the rugs. And I'm coming to see her, and the street is up above, and then you go down steps to go to her house, and she has this really lovely big picture window. And so I can see her in the picture window as I park my car. And what I see is her walking over and bending down, and then standing up and walking over a little further and bending down. And here what she's doing is she's picking up all of her rugs because she knows we're going to tell her to pick them all up. And I thought, if somebody's going to fall, it's going to be more in terms of her bending down, picking it up, bending down, picking it up, if her balance is off. So that really brought to my attention of rugs may need to be moved, but maybe they don't. And it comes down to how the person is moving in that space. So,
well, speaking of rugs, about a year and a half ago, my mom did trip over a rug and she broke her hip. And unfortunately, never fully recovered. So now she uses a walker. We had to move her out of the house that she's been in for 60 years that my dad built for her and our family, and move her into an apartment right across the street from my brother. And so I can see where the rugs certainly come into play, and can certainly cause a fall as it did with my mom. So, so great. Thank you for those, wonderful recommendations. I'm sure you have lots more that you could share with us. And we'll be going to a break here very shortly. And so before we go into that, I just want to remind everybody that you can email us with any questions or comments by going to radio@coasjc.org. And when we return, we'll read an email that we got from Bob C. We'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back to the weekly radio show of St. Johns County Council on Aging. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, and we're coming to you live from studio of WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Joining me today is Dr. Sharon Glover, the Assistant Professor of Occupational Therapy Programs at the University of St Augustine for Health Sciences. Prior to commercial, I was reminding everybody about our email, where you can email questions or comments, and you can do that by emailing radio@coasjc.org. And we have one faithful listener out there who emails us every week, and that is Bob C. And he wrote this. He comes to our senior center, and he said, I have been going to pro bono for about 6 years. I find the students are so friendly and willing to learn. That is a testimony to what Dr. Glover expects, and it is so good to see. Please let your staff know how much we appreciate them. So I was just wondering, Dr. Glover, if you would speak a little bit more into when he says pro bono, what exactly is he talking about?
Right. So we have, with our student learning, we have, of course, they learn online. They get a lot of lecture material that way. And then when they come to class, we do a lot of hands-on activities in our labs. But then we also want our students to actually interact with quote, real people, right? Not just the faculty. And so we have our community experiences where we go to the COA and different places, but we also have pro bono. And pro bono has both a physical therapy component and an occupational therapy component. We offer it for both our residential programs Monday through Friday time, and we offer it on our weekend programs. And it's basically a time where we're asking people who have some type of a problem. Maybe they hurt their shoulder, or maybe they had a stroke, or they've had some other kind of problem, and they want therapy, and perhaps their therapy, they've finished all their therapy, their insurance is done paying for it, they can't, get it anymore. So that's where our pro bono comes in. Pro bono meaning free. And so we have a process where they sign up for the pro bono clinic, they schedule them, and then our students get to work with that client under the supervision of a licensed therapist, one of our faculty, and they get to learn what you would do with that type of problem and how to interact with them. And one of the things we always emphasize to our students is that personal connection, that it's not just, the guy who hurt his shoulder is coming in at 2:00, but it's Bob who's coming in at 2:00, and the things that Bob is interested in. And for us as occupational therapists, this is wonderful because we can look at Bob and say, well, whatever's wrong with you, Bob, but what are those things you really want to do? That's what we're going to focus on too. So it's a nice way for our students to learn a little bit more, get a little more real world experience.
And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask today is, you've been coming for quite some time, the students from the University of St Augustine. And so what is it that you just love about it? Like, why do you love bringing the students to the COA?
Well, the COA is a lovely place. We like it. We started actually with the Sunshine Center, and last week you guys had Paulette on. She's wonderful. And we started with their center, and then we've expanded by talking with the people at the COA and saying, hey, do you have any other opportunities for us? So now we go to 3 of your centers. We go to the COA. On Marine Street. We go to the Sunshine Center, and then we go to the center out in Hastings. And they're all 3 wonderful places. They're all 3 very different places. And so our students get a little different experience at each one. But the primary reason that we send them out is for them to get comfortable interacting with people. It's easy in school to only talk to the people that you have class with and only talk to the professors but our profession, we work with people. We are out there with people. That's our job. So this gives them that time to really get to talk to them. They get to try developing activities and then seeing how those activities work. We love when the COA participants tell the students what they liked about what they did. And we love it when they tell them what they didn't like about it. When they tell them, like, I didn't really enjoy this, or I didn't see understand the reason why you had me do this. Because it really helps our students learn how to explain what is occupational therapy, how is this going to help a person. And so your participants are probably the major reason why we like it, because they are so welcoming and open to having our students there and then talking to the students and giving them that experience. So it's fun. Some of our students are like, I wish I could go more. And I'm like, well, you have to go to class. Sorry.
So do you find that in occupational therapy, are most of the people that would benefit from occupational therapy older, or do you kind of have a mixture of age groups?
It's really everywhere. The profession, because we say we are helping you with the things you need and want to do, that means we can work with people from a neonatal all the way up through hospice and palliative care. So you find that therapists tend to learn all about all of it and then find an area where they really enjoy working in. I actually started in psychiatry, working with people in a state psychiatric hospital, and now I work primarily in environmental modifications with the older adult. So it's kind of where your pathway takes you and where your interests are. We have some wonderful faculty who work in pediatrics, and they love working with the kids, and that's where their passion is. And so it's a nice profession to have that broad spectrum of places where you can go. I, of course, love that older adult population because, as I tell everybody, we're all going to be older adults one day. So the better we set it up now, the better for all of us down the road. So that's, I think anywhere is good. Any setting is good. Schools, nurseries, hospitals, intensive care units, nursing homes, rehab centers, assisted living facilities. Home care is a big area for us where we'll go into people's homes, outpatient clinics. And then I have a friend who she specializes in hospice and palliative care. That's a real special area for occupational therapy, an important area, but really special for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking earlier about, some of the different modifications to the home, and you mentioned grab bars and, the different things like that. And so I just wanted to make sure remind our listeners that, one of the programs that we have at COA is called Care Connection. And through that program, we provide different devices at no charge. So we have walkers available. We have some wheelchairs available. We have the grab bar installation. We have a group of volunteers that come out and cut grass. We have a group of volunteers that will build handicap ramps, just different things to help, modify the home so that we can, because our goal at COA is to keep our seniors in their home as long as possible, because just as the saying goes, there's no place like home.
Exactly. The home is so important to people. I feel like we need to talk more about this care connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's great that, that occupational therapists and physical therapists as well will go into the home, to work with the individuals that are needing the help. So I think that's a wonderful thing that is done, because when you think, the good old days, not that I was alive back at this time frame, but doctors used to do that as well, where they would go to the home and do the visits. And so it's nice to hear that is still taking place with our physical and occupational therapists. Mm-hmm. So when we come back, we'll have another break here in just a moment. When we come back, we'll talk about what it is like to go through the evaluation process. Somebody's been sent to an occupational therapist, and you can walk us through that. We'll be back in just a moment with the COA Weekly Radio Show. And welcome back to the Weekly Radio Show of St. Johns County Council on Aging. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, joined today by Dr. Sharon Glover, Assistant Professor of Occupational Therapy Programs at the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences. So our topic today has been occupational therapy, and we've talked about a lot of different things. And what I wanted to talk about in this last segment is just for our listeners out there, and maybe they haven't had to encounter meeting with an occupational therapist, right? And so let's say something happens in their life, and the doctor says, okay, I want to set you up to meet with an occupational therapist. Can you just kind of walk us through what that experience would be like?
Sure. So in occupational therapy, we do an evaluation, and we look at the evaluation in two components. An occupational profile, which is when we are getting information from the person, kind of like an interview where we're going to ask you a lot of questions about what's important to you, how did this injury happen, what do you think you need to do, where is it affecting you, what are you having difficulty with. We also ask about your environment, your home, the setup, who else lives there, if you have pets, just all that kind of stuff. Kind of looking to see, who are the support systems out there, what might be some barriers to you being able to do the things that you want to do. And then we have the assessment portion where we are actually watching you perform different assessments. So sometimes we use what we call standardized assessments, and those are specific assessments such as one is the CELS, which is the Coleman Evaluation of Living Skills. The CELS goes through things like money management. It looks at safety risk. It talks about your awareness of different community organizations, different things like that, to kind of give a general sense of where are you. We might also do a cognitive assessment, a cognitive screening. One of the ones that we use there is called the MOCA, which is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. And it's pretty simple in terms of people don't find it really a scary assessment. Sometimes, your doctor's like, I'm going to ask you all these questions. You get really nervous. But it finds out like how your brain is functioning and where maybe you have some problems with that or where you're doing really, really well. And then we do what we call an ADL assessment. And an ADL assessment is looking at your activities of daily living. Those are things like brushing your teeth, combing your hair, getting dressed, taking a shower, being able to get in and out of a chair, doing some physical things to get a sense of that. And then finally, we look at things like your range of motion, your strength. What are those other important things that you need to do in your home? So maybe you are responsible for the meals or your gardening, whatever that is for all of those things. And that's kind of a general assessment. We're just getting general information that shows us where you think the problems are, but also where we see what the problems are. So you maybe are having problems getting your shirt on, and we see that that's because you have decreased range of motion, movement in your shoulder, or maybe it's because you have decreased strength, or maybe it's because you can't hold on to something with your hand, and that's what's causing you to have difficulty doing the buttons or whatever. So we're assessing that occupation, dressing, but also those underlying factors of strength, gripping, range of motion, all kinds of other things in there. It's hard to explain everything that goes in there. I actually teach a class on that, and it takes 14 weeks. So my students are learning this process right now. But if we need additional information, we can do additional specific assessments. There are specific assessments, like there are driving assessments. There are specific assessments for people who have visual problems. So if you have low vision or you're having to have visual problems, there are specific assessments we can do for that. So we look at the sort of the general phase, and then we get into more specifics based on where you're having your problems.
So with our older folks, one of the things that you experience is the slow process of losing your independence, right? Yeah. And so I guess a question that comes to my mind is, do you find with those who are older and, they're in that process where they're slowly losing their independence, do you find them to be hesitant to have an occupational therapist come in just because they're afraid that the report might then end up having them have to leave their home?
Yeah. I think that's a fear that a lot of people have, that if you find a problem, then I can't stay here. But our goal is not to find the problem to say you can't stay here or you can't do this, but to find the problem that's preventing you from doing that and helping you to then be able to do that. And so as an occupational therapist, we also look through the process. I'm going to use some OT terms, so I'll try to not get too crazy there. But we'll look through like a restoration process where we're looking at, you fell and you broke your arm. Well, the expectation is that it's going to heal and you're going to get movement back in it. So we're going to focus on moving your arm so that you get back as much movement as possible so you can go back to doing those things that you used to do. Or maybe we look at it from a compensatory approach where you've had perhaps a stroke and your arm isn't working the way that it used to, and it doesn't seem to be coming back. You want it to, but it just doesn't seem to want to do that. We might teach you another way, a technique to be able to get dressed or to be able to cook a meal when that arm isn't working at the way you want it to, but you can still do those things that you need to do. So a lot of our time in our evaluation is really getting to know what's important to you and being able to say, how can we help you to do those things? It's, as an occupational therapist, I'm only there for a short period of time in your life, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you as much as I can. And so I'm looking at how I can help you, yourself as your person, both physically, but also what are important values to you and beliefs to you that you need to do, and what are those roles that you need to perform. So are you the housekeeper and you want to be able to cook, or are you perfectly happy to have somebody else cook your meals for you? We're not going to focus on cooking meals if there's somebody else who wants to do it and you're happy to have them do it. So it really is very individualized for each person and how we can best help you. Sometimes, where you're living maybe isn't the best place, but that is still something where we're going to try to help you figure that out and make the best decision for it. I don't know any occupational therapist who walks into a person's room and says, oh my gosh, you can't live here any longer, you must move into the nursing home. Because as I tell my students, we don't pick out our nursing homes and say, this is where I'm going in a couple of years. That's kind of, and it's not because nursing homes are bad. I've worked in many nursing homes and they do really good work, but because we want to stay home. And so we look at that too, of how can we help you stay home or somewhere else? Because sometimes it's not, I can't stay home, but maybe I have to move in with my kids, or maybe I'm going to move in with my brother or sister or something else. All of those transitions is hard. It's hard to move. Even when you want to move, it's still hard. And so we try to help you understand what you can do, where you need that assistance so that you can stay in the best environment for you.
And then do you also kind of work with the caregiver? So
Yes.
Helping that person understand, what he or she can do to help their loved one adjust and what type of things need to be done that they can do in the home as well.
Yes, there's a lot of times with the caregivers. If someone has a caregiver, part of our evaluation will be, is that caregiver willing and able to help? You might say, well, my husband's going to do this for me, but what if your husband can't do that for you? So we have to really look at, is that caregiver able to help? Are they willing to help? Sometimes people don't want to do all of those things. I worked with a lady who, she had sons, and she had 6 sons, and she had a stroke, and so her biggest issue was she couldn't get a bath, and she was like adamant her sons were not going to see their mother naked. She did not care. It was like, she said, I will go without a bath before I let my sons see me. And so what the sons did with talking to her about that was they found one of their wives who she was very comfortable with of allowing that. And so the wife became like the caregiver for that bath time. But the rest of the time, her sons were over there, and they did a lot of things together. Her grandkids, she still lived in her home. She was very vibrant with it. There were a lot of things she couldn't do. She primarily was in a wheelchair for most of her time because she just got tired so very quickly. And so here's my Pittsburgh part coming out. She was still making pierogies, and she did cookies for every cookie table for her, I think, 6 of her grandchildren. So, this woman did a lot of things on her own. So it's not, people sometimes assume like, oh my gosh, this happens, I'll never be able to do it myself. But you can.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. And boy, time has gone so quick today. Dr. Glover, thank you for being here. It's been great talking to you. And about occupational therapy, we love the University of St Augustine for Health Sciences. Join us next week as we'll have COA's Development Manager, Amy Robinson, with us.